"She can't afford to be here," my cousin whispered at the country club. The words hit me like a slap. She said it so loudly that everyone at the table turned their heads. My stomach dropped, my hands shook, and before I could even think of what to say back, the manager walked over to us. "Let me walk you through this moment and everything behind it, because it's one of those stories that stays with you long after it happened. If it connects with you, I hope you'll stay until the end and share your thoughts. My name is Lena. I'm in my mid-20s, and I've always known the value of hard work. I wasn't raised with much. My parents gave me love, not luxury. I worked 2 jobs while saving up for nursing school, and though life isn't easy, I take pride in being independent. I never expect handouts, and I don't pretend to be something I'm not. My cousin Melissa, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. She grew up spoiled, married into even more money, and loves to flaunt it. To the outside world, she acts generous, inviting family to her big events, paying for dinners, making a show of being caring. But underneath that, she thrives on humiliating me. Every favor she does comes with a sharp edge meant to remind me of my place. So when Melissa invited me to her exclusive country club, I knew it wasn't because she wanted to spend time with me. She called it family bonding, but I could already sense it was a setup. Still, I went partly because my parents always told me, family is family. You should try. I told myself I could handle whatever she threw at me. The club itself was overwhelming. Polished marble floors, people in expensive clothes, waiters serving drinks I couldn't even pronounce. Melissa made sure I sat right next to her group of rich friends, all of them eyeing me like I didn't belong. She smiled sweetly, but her eyes were full of that familiar mischief, like she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then she did. She leaned in, pretending to whisper, but raised her voice enough so everyone could hear. "She can't afford to be here." The table went silent. My face burned as if the whole room was staring at me. I wanted to disappear. I could hear soft chuckles, the kind people try to hide behind their napkin. My chest tightened with shame, but also with anger. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had paid for my own dress, my own bus ride there, even the small gift I brought Melissa. I didn't deserve to be mocked. And just as my cousin sat back in her chair, smirking, the manager appeared beside us. My heart pounded. Was Melissa about to take this humiliation even further? Would I be asked to leave in front of everyone? I sat frozen, bracing myself for whatever was about to come next. Growing up, I was always reminded by my parents that family should come first. They would say things like, "No matter what, stay close to your cousins, because one day you'll need each other." I believed that for a long time. I tried to brush off the little digs Melissa threw at me, thinking maybe it was just her way of joking. But deep down, I knew better. Melissa didn't joke, she belittled. Every chance she got, she found a way to make me feel small. While I spent my days juggling 2 jobs, saving every dollar I could for nursing school, Melissa was busy flaunting her lifestyle. She showed up at family dinners dripping in designer clothes, dropping casual mentions about weekend getaways, or how her husband had just bought her another piece of jewelry just because. I never envied her things, but I hated the way she used them as weapons. She never missed a chance to remind me I wasn't on her level. Melissa had this way of acting generous, too. She would invite me places like the country club, call it quality time, and then later twist it so I was indebted to her. "See, I'm the only one who includes you," she would say, as if she deserved a medal. But her so-called kindness always came with sharp edges. That day at the club was no different. After she whispered that awful line about me not being able to afford being there, I felt myself shrinking into the chair. The manager, a tall man in a suit, walked up to the table. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Melissa tilted her head and put on her fake sweet smile. "Oh, excuse me," she said, loud enough for everyone around to hear. "I just wanted to make sure my cousin is allowed to sit here without a membership. She's visiting, you see. I wouldn't want her to get in trouble." It was the kind of sentence that sounded like concern on the surface, but the smug tone underneath made my blood boil. She wasn't worried about me. She wanted to embarrass me further, to confirm to everyone that I didn't belong. The manager looked at me briefly, then back at Melissa. He simply said, "She's fine, ma'am. Guests are allowed as long as they're with a member." His words were professional, but I could feel the weight of the glances around the table. Melissa gave a little laugh, acting as though she was relieved. I kept my eyes down, gripping my hands together under the table so no one would see them shaking. I forced a polite smile, swallowing every ounce of pride I had left, because arguing would only make me look worse. But in that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to forget the way Melissa smirked, or the way her friends whispered behind their napkin. She thought she had won, that she had put me in my place again. What she didn't realize was that every insult she threw was only planting the seed of something stronger inside me. Every family gathering was the same story. Melissa arrived like she was stepping onto a red carpet, dressed in designer clothes, carrying handbags that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and always with a new piece of jewelry. She made sure everyone noticed. She never came empty-handed either. She brought expensive gifts for the children, wine that looked like it belonged in a museum, and even once handed our grandmother an envelope stuffed with cash for emergencies. To everyone else, it made her look generous. To me, it was just another way to remind the family who had money and who didn't. I usually sat quietly, smiling politely, but the worst part wasn't even Melissa's arrogance. It was my own parents. Whenever Melissa made a cutting remark, they rushed to defend her. "She's just teasing, don't take it personally," my mother would say. My father would nod in agreement, reminding me that Melissa meant well, that I shouldn't hold grudges. But I knew better. Melissa's words weren't harmless jokes. They were daggers disguised as laughter. One evening, we had a family dinner at my aunt's house. Everyone was seated around the long dining table, chatting, passing dishes, catching up on small talk. I wore a simple blue dress I'd found at a thrift store a few weeks earlier. I had taken good care of it, washed and ironed it carefully, and honestly, I felt pretty in it. That feeling lasted all of 10 minutes. Melissa looked me up and down with that same amused expression she always wore before striking. Then she laughed and asked, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Oh, Lena, is that one of your charity finds? It's so humble." The room went quiet for a moment, then filled with nervous chuckles. My cheeks burned. I wanted to disappear, but instead I forced a smile and said nothing. My parents scolded me later for not laughing it off. They told me Melissa was only joking, that I shouldn't be so sensitive. But they didn't feel the sting in my chest, the shame that clung to me long after the night was over. Later that evening, I excused myself to get some water in the kitchen. As I turned the corner, I heard Melissa's voice, sharp and confident, speaking to two of our relatives. "Honestly, she's dragging down the family name. Every time she shows up, she looks like a charity case. It's embarrassing." The words froze me in place. I stayed hidden, listening as they laughed softly, agreeing with her. In that instant, the truth settled into me like cold stone. Melissa's cruelty wasn't careless. She wasn't teasing. Every insult, every smirk, every fake act of generosity, she planned it. She wanted to break me down piece by piece, to make sure no one ever saw me as her equal. But as I stood there in that kitchen, clutching the glass in my hand, something shifted inside me. I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling something else, something sharper, stronger. For the first time, I thought, maybe Melissa had underestimated. Maybe she had pushed too far. The seed of revenge was planted that night, and though it was small, I could feel it growing. For a while, I thought maybe life was finally giving me something good. His name was David. I met him at the hospital where I worked part-time as a receptionist while saving for nursing school. He wasn't flashy, not the type to impress with money or status, but he admired something about me no one else seemed to notice: my hard work. He told me once, "Lena, you don't realize how strong you are. Most people would have given up by now, but you keep going." Those words stayed with me, warming the places Melissa's insults had turned cold. David and I started dating seriously. He wasn't rich, but he was kind. He treated me with respect, he listened when I spoke, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was enough. I could almost forget the constant shadow of my cousin's cruelty. Almost. When Melissa found out about David, she surprised me by acting thrilled. "Oh my gosh, Lena, finally! I'm so happy for you," she squealed at a family gathering, hugging me a little too tightly. For a second, I wanted to believe her. Maybe she had turned a corner. Maybe she could be happy for me. But I should have known better. It started small. Melissa would ask David questions that felt too personal, about his job, his ambitions, even his taste in women. At first, I brushed it off as curiosity. But then I noticed how she leaned a little too close when she talked to him, how she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, how her eyes lingered on him in a way that made me uncomfortable. The worst moment came at a family barbecue. I had gone inside to grab drinks, and when I returned, I froze. There was Melissa, sitting so close to David their shoulders nearly touched. Her voice was low, but I caught the words. "You don't even realize what you could have if you dated up." I stood there, stunned, my heart pounding in my ears. David looked uncomfortable, leaning back slightly, and the second he noticed me, he jumped to his feet. "Lena, it's not what it looks like," he said quickly. Melissa just smiled innocently, like she hadn't been caught doing anything at all. David swore he wasn't interested, that he would never betray me, and I wanted to believe him. But no matter how many times I replayed it in my head, Melissa's voice haunted me. "What you could have if you dated up." A few days later, I found out it wasn't enough for her to flirt behind my back. Melissa had started spreading a rumor through the family, that David was only dating me out of pity, that he felt sorry for me and didn't really see a future with someone like me. That cut deeper than any insult she had ever thrown. This wasn't about clothes or money anymore. She was trying to destroy the one good thing I had, the happiness I thought was safe from her poison. That was the day something inside me snapped. Melissa wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous to my life, my love, my peace. And I knew I couldn't keep letting her win. When I told my parents what Melissa had done with David, how she had tried to wedge herself between us and even spread lies, I thought maybe this time they would finally take my side. Instead, my mother sighed and shook her head. Lena, you can't keep letting her get under your skin. Just ignore her. Family should stick together. My father added, she's jealous, that's all. Don't give her the satisfaction of reacting. Their words felt like salt in an open wound. How could they not see what Melissa was doing to me? It wasn't harmless teasing anymore. She was actively trying to ruin my life. Yet they wanted me to smile, nod, and take it. I went to bed that night with tears on my pillow, but by morning, something inside me hardened. I realized that if I kept waiting for someone to defend me, I'd be waiting forever. If I wanted peace, I had to fight for it myself. From that point on, I stopped reacting the way Melissa expected. When she made snide comments at gatherings, I didn't flinch. When she pretended to help me by offering hand-me-downs or calling me her charity case, I just smiled faintly and said nothing. Outwardly, I looked calm, but inside I was watching her more closely than ever before. And what I noticed changed everything. Melissa lived big, but not smart. She was always flashing something new, an expensive handbag, a new dress, jewelry she swore her husband had gifted her. But behind those shiny displays, there were cracks. Once, I overheard her on the phone arguing with a bank about late payments. Another time, I caught her hiding mail from her husband, sliding envelopes quickly into her purse before he could see. I realized she was drowning in debts, but keeping it a secret to protect her image. The more I watched, the clearer it became. Melissa's arrogance didn't just extend to humiliating. She thought she was untouchable in every area of her life, including her finances. And people like that always leave trails. Then came her birthday. Of course, it wasn't a simple celebration. It was a grand event at the country club, complete with decorations, champagne, and a cake taller than most children. She swept through the room like royalty, making sure every guest saw her perfect life on display. I was there too, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd. In the past, nights like this would have crushed me. I would have felt small, out of place, humiliated just by breathing the same air as her rich friends. But this time was different. I wasn't there to compare myself to Melissa anymore. I was there to study her, to watch how she moved, who she talked to, what she tried to hide. As I sipped my water and observed her laugh too loudly, gesture too grandly, I felt something settle inside me. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't angry. I was calculating. For the first time, I realized I had the power to turn her own world against her. And sooner or later, I would. Once I stopped letting Melissa's insults cut into me, I started seeing her different. For years, she had painted herself as untouchable, the perfect wife with the perfect life. But now that I was paying attention, I saw the cracks more clearly. And I knew if I followed them long enough, they would lead straight to her downfall. I began small, watching her patterns. She bragged constantly about her shopping trips, her exclusive club privileges, the way her husband spoiled her. But when I listened closely, the details never quite matched up. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, voice tight with panic, as she argued with a bank representative about overdue payments. The next week, she casually told her friends her husband had surprised her with a new bracelet. That was when I realized she wasn't just arrogant. She was lying to maintain the image of wealth she didn't really have. I started digging quietly. At family dinners, I listened more than I spoke. At the club, I kept my ears open when she ordered drinks or arranged events. And slowly, the pieces came together. Melissa had been taking out loans in her husband's name, using his credit behind his back to fund her lifestyle. She had maxed out more than one account, but managed to keep him in the dark by intercepting letters and calls. But that wasn't all. At the country club, she wasn't just showing off, she was cheating. I learned from one of the waiters that she often charged her expenses to other members' accounts, pretending it was a mistake later if anyone caught on. She also lied about which relatives were part of her family membership, sneaking in friends who had no right to be there. Everyone assumed Melissa was too important, too polished, to be questioned. But I knew better now. I began collecting proof. I saved receipts she carelessly left behind. I wrote down conversations I overheard. A few times, I managed to snap photos of her signing things she shouldn't have. At first, I wasn't sure what I'd do with it all. But as the folder of evidence grew, so did my certainty. Melissa had built her empire on lies, and it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. Still, I didn't want to strike too early. If I went after her without care, she'd twist it like she always did, make me look bitter, jealous, unstable. No, I needed to wait until she was standing on the tallest stage, convinced the whole world adored her. That was when the fall would be most devastating. That moment came sooner than I expected. Melissa began planning her wedding anniversary gala at the country club, bragging to everyone about the lavish event. The guest list was stacked with her husband's business partners, wealthy friends, and of course the extended family. It was to be her grand showcase, her chance to remind the world how perfect her life was. And as I listened to her boast about it, I smiled quietly to myself, because I knew that gala wouldn't be her shining moment. It would be the stage where all of her secrets came crashing down. The night of Melissa's anniversary gala arrived, and the country club was lit up like a palace. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters in crisp uniforms carried trays of champagne, and guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos filled the room with laughter and chatter. It was exactly the kind of stage Melissa loved, grand, glamorous, and full of people she wanted to impress. I walked in quietly, blending into the crowd, but my heart beat steady. I wasn't here to be humiliated this time. I was here to end her game. Melissa floated through the room like a queen, her sequin dress catching the light with every step. Her husband, proud and unsuspecting, stood at her side, greeting business partners and old friends. When it came time for speeches, Melissa seized the microphone with a dazzling smile. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating marriage," she began, her voice smooth and confident. "It's about celebrating family. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is loyalty, love, and supporting one another." Her words dripped with irony. And then, just as if she had rehearsed it, her eyes landed on me. She smirked, raising her glass in my direction, as though daring me to crumble under her gaze in front of everyone. But I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, calm and steady, carrying the folder I had kept hidden for weeks. The room quieted as I approached the manager, who stood near the front, overseeing the event. I handed him the folder without a word. His brow furrowed as he opened it and began flipping through the pages. The silence deepened. Melissa's smile faltered for the first time that night. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice sharp now. The manager cleared his throat, his tone professional but loud enough for the room to hear. "Yes, there is. These documents show multiple violations of club rules, all tied to your account. Unauthorized guests listed under your family membership, charges billed to other members without consent, and falsified signatures." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Melissa's husband turned to her, his face darkening as he listened. "That's ridiculous." Melissa snapped, her voice rising. "Someone is trying to sabotage me." But the manager continued. "And these records also connect to outstanding debts under your household's name. Debts your husband may not be aware of." Her husband's head whipped toward her. "Melissa, what is he talking about?" His voice was low, dangerous. I stood quietly, not saying a word, while Melissa's world unraveled in front of everyone she had worked so hard to impress. Whispers filled the room. Her friends covered their mouths, wide-eyed. The image of perfection she had built was crumbling, piece by piece, and there was no way to stop it. Melissa's face flushed red, her hands shaking as she tried to argue, to explain, to twist the truth the way she always had. But the evidence was undeniable. For the first time, she was the one exposed, stripped of her power. And I just stood there, calm and steady, watching as the cracks finally split wide open. The ballroom, once filled with glittering laughter and the clinking of glasses, now trembled with tension so sharp it could slice through the chandeliers overhead. Melissa's husband, Charles, stood frozen beside her, his face drained of color as the manager's voice echoed through the grand hall. "Mrs. Melissa Carter has violated several rules of this institution. Her membership is revoked, effective immediately." A gasp swept through the crowd. The whispers followed instantly, curling like smoke through the air. She lied about her status? Loans in Charles's name. I always wondered how she afforded all those gowns. Each fragment of conversation twisted like knives into Melissa's carefully crafted image. Charles turned to her, his hands trembling as his voice boomed. "Melissa, you used my name? My accounts? You dragged my reputation into this circus for your games." His anger wasn't the quiet sort. It was raw, cracking through the polite facade of the evening. "You lied to me. To everyone." Melissa's flawless smile, the one she had worn for decades like armor, faltered. She reached for him, her jeweled fingers trembling. "Charles, please, it's not what it looks like. I only wanted." "What you wanted," he cut her off, stepping back from her touch, "was to live in a fantasy, no matter who paid the price." His voice was low now, but the fury in his tone carried across the silent ballroom. The manager motioned to staff. Already, Melissa's club privileges were being stripped, her access card taken, her name erased from the membership board. People who had once laughed at her jokes now turned away, unwilling to be caught in the wake of her disgrace. Lena stood still, calm as stone in the storm. She didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't even shift her weight. She simply let the truth sit in the air, heavy and undeniable. Every eye in the room darted between her serene presence and Melissa's unraveling. Melissa, realizing the tide had turned completely against her, snapped. "This is your doing, isn't it, Lena?" she shouted, her voice shrill, breaking through the rigid silence. She pointed an accusing finger across the room. "You've always been jealous. always wanting what's mine. But no one nodded in agreement. No one murmured support. The crowd had seen enough evidence, enough hypocrisy laid bare. Even the people Melissa once called her closest friends avoided her gaze, adjusting their pearls and bow ties as if she had never existed. Melissa's screams grew desperate. "You'll all regret this. You'll see. I'll come back stronger than ever." But her voice was drowned out by the weight of her isolation. Lena finally met her eyes, calm, unflinching. She didn't utter a word. That silence said everything. It was Melissa's lies, not Lena's hands, that had destroyed her. And in that silence, Melissa drowned, abandoned by the world she had built on nothing but smoke and mirrors. The night air outside the country club felt different, lighter, as if the weight Lena had carried for years had finally lifted. She didn't rush out. She walked with quiet dignity, David by her side, their hands brushing occasionally but not quite locking, as if he knew she needed the silence more than comfort. Inside, Melissa's world was crumbling in real time, but Lena had no desire to see the aftermath of her cousin's downfall. She had done what she came to do. The whispers grew louder behind her as she stepped away from the gala hall. Melissa's husband had stormed out after her, but not to chase her. His face was red with fury, his eyes fixed on the woman he thought he knew. "How much of this is true, Melissa?" he had demanded, papers in his hand. The evidence Lena had brought was undeniable. Unpaid debts, fraudulent expenses, accounts drained. Melissa tried to shout over him, tried to twist the story, but the crowd had heard enough. In just minutes, the perfect image she had curated was shattered. By the time Lena reached the parking lot, David finally spoke. "You didn't just expose her lies," he said softly. "You freed yourself from them." Lena's eyes brimmed with tears, not of sorrow but of release. For so long, her parents had urged her to stay quiet. "Family doesn't air its dirty laundry," they'd told her. "Endure it, Lena. She's your cousin." But family had been the knife that cut deepest, and silence had been her heaviest chain. Tonight, both were broken. The next day, news spread quickly through their community. Melissa's husband filed for separation, unable to forgive the deceit that stretched far beyond the country club. The whispers among high society circles turned to avoidance. Invitations stopped arriving, friends stopped returning her calls. Those who once laughed with her at Lena's expense now crossed the street to avoid her humiliation. Lena's parents called her that evening. There was a long silence before her mother spoke, her voice trembling. "We were wrong, Lena. We should have stood by you. We thought keeping peace mattered more, but we let you carry pain you never deserved." Lena didn't say much. She wasn't ready to pour out forgiveness. But for the first time, she felt heard. She didn't feel triumphant. There was no victory dance, no gloating, no parading of Melissa's downfall. What she felt was peace, something Melissa could never take from her again. She had walked through years of whispers, insults, and manipulation, and now she was walking away free. As she stood on her balcony that night, the city lights flickering in the distance, Lena whispered to herself, "It's over." And for once, she truly believed it. The scars remained, yes, but they no longer defined her. What defined her now was the choice she had made: to rise, to speak, to be free. The country club loomed in the distance, its tall iron gates catching the glow of the evening lights. Lena slowed her pace as she passed by, the echoes of that fateful night still fresh in her mind. The laughter, the whispers, the moment her cousin tried to shatter her confidence, it all replayed like a film reel. But this time, she didn't flinch. She didn't lower her gaze. She simply walked, her head lifted, her shoulders free of the weight she had carried for years. For so long, Lena had believed silence was the nobler choice. She had let Melissa's sharp words slide, convinced that swallowing the pain made her the bigger person. Her parents had always preached restraint. Family is family. Let it go, Lena. But silence had been a prison, one that only emboldened Melissa to dig deeper, to strike harder. That night at the gala, when truth spilled out in front of the very people Melissa had tried so hard to impress, Lena realized something profound. Reclaiming her dignity wasn't vengeance. It was survival. She remembered the look on Melissa's face when the manager revoked her membership, when her own husband stepped away in disgust. That wasn't the victory Lena savored. The victory was in her restraint. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't gloated. She had simply stood her ground, letting Melissa unravel under the weight of her own deceit. For once, Lena hadn't been the one forced to carry the shame. As she walked past the club now, she thought about family. The word used to feel heavy, a chain that bound her to loyalty even when it hurt. But family, she had come to understand, wasn't about shared blood. Blood could wound you, betray you, strip you bare in front of strangers. Respect, that was the true thread that wove people together. And when respect was gone, so was family. She paused at the gates, staring at the polished crest mounted high above the entrance. Once, she had seen it as a symbol of belonging, the doorway to a world Melissa guarded like a Now, it was nothing more than metal and stone. She didn't need entry anymore. She didn't need validation. What she had needed all along was to stand tall, to refuse to shrink under someone else's shadow. A soft breeze tugged at her hair, and Lena smiled faintly. She wasn't triumphant, not in the way Melissa might have feared. She was something better, free. Free from comparison. Free from the silence that once choked her. Free from the false idea that blood meant unconditional loyalty. Without another glance, Lena turned away from the gates and continued down the quiet road. Her footsteps were steady, unhurried, carrying her forward. The country club remained behind her, a monument to the past she no longer feared. Ahead, the night stretched open, vast and unclaimed. And for the first time in years, Lena felt the kind of peace no one, not even family, could take from her. Do you believe Lena made the right choice by standing up for herself and walking away from the toxic bonds of her family, or should she have tried harder to keep the peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear your perspective. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another one.